Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them, and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Hi, Mel.
Hi, Anita.
How are you?
I'm just swell. How are you?
Good. What's on your shirt?
A lion?
I have
Really?
I have Sasquatch riding a dinosaur.
I love that shirt.
Yeah, or can we
Funny
tell?
story about this shirt is when I would go skiing with Scott, I made up a holiday for myself and I made him do it. And it was cat shirt ski Friday. Every Friday, he hated all things tacky. And of course, I love like poking the bear. And so I was like, if you
Poking the
ski with me,
lion.
you have to have your own cat shirt. He was like, I will never. And then he's like, okay, fine, I will. This is what he ordered. Like, that is not a cat shirt. Like, I'm talking cat with laser eyes.
He went for the elegant cat, the lion.
He was very metrosexual, so it worked for him, but it did not work for me. So,
So, what's our topic of the day?
oh, it's a good one.
Okay.
Social media.
Okay, let's do it.
Go.
All right. So, to get into it, we are following up with a conversation, one of our last episodes, where we touched on this and we wanted to talk more about it because we all know that social media is a blessing and it's a curse at the same time. And when you're dealing with something as emotional as your spouse dying and you're a mess, it's like walking through a minefield. It's hard.
Yes. And sometimes it's amazing because we find great community there. We find acceptance. We find people that are going through the same things as we are. And we also find people who don't relate or that may type some things that maybe aren't in line with what you're thinking. And there's lots of room for misinterpretation. There are also actual trolls living under the bridge of social media.
Mm.
I think most of the time in our cases with widow stuff, it's more like we have a good close-knit community, but then at the same time things can be misinterpreted or
Yeah.
hit.
Or even just people can have different experiences. One of the things we talk about all the time in grief is that there's no wrong way to do it, but sometimes we get in our posture of like, this is how I'm doing it. And so if somebody else has a different experience, then we can feel like our way of doing it is being attacked, even though maybe it is or it isn't. But because we are in a really like emotionally sensitive time, it's hard for us to maybe parse through some of the stuff that if we were in a better mindset and our brains didn't just explode, we'd be able to deal with that a little bit better.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
widow different than you widow. And
it's
you widow
true.
different than other people
But
widow.
it's so amazing. I have widow friends from across the world. I
Oh,
have
they're my friends too.
I have friends
Oh.
outside of our friendship, which is not really true. It's probably not true. But across the world, similar ages, similar kids, same way of dying. And then I have widow friends from different places who are different ages, don't have kids. You know what I'm saying? Just a lot of different experiences. And I would never, ever, ever have that without social media, because that's how we find them. We go on there and we find them, and then we hook up with each other, not hook up with each other, not in that way, but band together and we form this community that's really, really helpful, right?
Yes. And the widow community is so awesome because it continues to grow. When I first became a widow, there were not as many accounts, like on Instagram, for
Right.
example, for young widows or widows in general. And now there's, I don't know numbers, but it's got to have like tripled or quadrupled because there's a big community. And so it's giving people a voice that have not had it before so that we can help spread the word and find community. And I know that's been a lifesaver, like a literal lifesaver.
Yeah, I agree. And we're able to normalize the grief process for not only those of us who are going through it, but for those people who are on the outside of grief and don't really know what grief actually looks like, because in our society for so long it was just like shove it down, like don't talk about it. And even if you did talk about it, you weren't exposed to a lot of people. You maybe knew one or two young widows in your lifetime or whatever. So it's just really broadened the ability to find and connect and normalize.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's the good parts.
let's talk about the cons.
The not so good parts. So you talked about trolls, and then we talked about people who are not trolls but have had a different experience or maybe feel defensive, and so there's some back and forth. And when you're feeling so like just yes.
Tell me more.
When you're in such a hard position emotionally, things are probably worse in your mind than they would be at another point in time in your life.
Yes. And there's also the reality that people are in different parts of their grief journey, such as
True.
time from the loss, coping mechanisms, support systems, all of those things. So it can be a minefield, like you said.
Yeah, it's hard to compare yourself to somebody who's 5 years down the road or 2 years down the road or whatever it is from where you are, because we kind of know that grief changes over the time frame. And even though it's different for everybody, for most people it does change. So you can can be problematic if you're comparing to people in different point in the timeline.
Definitely. Early grief, you've likened it unto a burn victim before.
Yeah. It's like early grief is like save their life, it's like first aid and keep them alive. And then as things, change, then it's different from them. What do you think about, I get nervous about this, Mel, and I wonder if you feel the same way. We are out in not only the social media, but the podcast and the YouTube world. And do you ever get nervous that we're going to say something that not upsets, because that seems trivial, but hurts other people or makes them feel like they're not doing it right or well or good enough.
Oh,
Does that
100% of the time I'm trying to be cognizant of that. And it's hard because we each have our own experiences, and there's no way that people can understand 100% what our experience is. Like, we do our best to convey it. We do our best to talk about things that we've seen or heard, and we've seen it before where sometimes even just with an episode, like, we'll get an email from somebody whose life was changed by it, and then the same, like, 10 minutes later, we get an email that's like, I was triggered by this. And so
I know
it's so hard. I mean, it doesn't happen as often as we would think, but we're always trying to be aware. And so we're really grateful for our audience and our widow friends that listen, that kind of give us that space to maybe take things with a grain of salt,
yeah.
or to try and understand that we are never trying to ever present something that would be hurtful to somebody, because we would never want to do that. But it's hard. I mean, and with the podcast, we're talking with nuance, and we have our voices and we have our personalities, and there's still misunderstandings. And then go over to social media, like, where it's just a post. Like, I'm not talking about stories or reels or IGTV. It's just written word. I mean, and how many times do people get so mad about things that are just in written form? There's no nuance. And so this is why it's a minefield. Everybody knows this that's on social media. This is not new information. The other thing is that most of the time when people go to social media, unless it's your job and you're a marketer, you're going to social media for your relaxation time or just for fun, when your defenses are, quote, down. And so if you go to social media and your defenses are down, and you see something that maybe doesn't jive with you, or it's like a little stinger, or, kind of remind you of something that goes against how you feel, it can be even easier to get triggered, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. And what you were saying before, where you lose the nuance. And I mean, I like to think that we are being so sincere. We are being so sincere, but we are trying to be really thoughtful in what we say and how we say it, and try and be helpful. And we still find ourselves in times where people say, that hurt me, or that made me feel bad. And it's like, it's a little bit crushing, because it's like, we're not trying to do that. And we realize that it's not always helpful just to be like, well, we didn't mean to, hurt your feelings, so don't have your feelings hurt. But it's like, does the benefit of this information and being able to form this community outweigh the potential for harm? And I think for the most part, yes, it does. But I do think that there are times where it is probably responsible to take a step back and not even partake in anything that doesn't come from your own head or from people who know you really, really, really well.
Absolutely. And think about, even when you're just on social media and you're staring at your phone, your eyes are like barely moving outside of like a few inches, right? And so you're heavily focused, maybe even hyper focused. A lot of thoughts might be going through your head. You're comparing yourself, for good or for bad. And it's so easy to go down the vortex of that. So, oh yeah, I definitely think that the benefits outweigh it, but there are tons of issues with it as well.
Yeah.
The thing that I think is fascinating, and that I've maybe been aware more of because we are doing podcasts and things like that, so we talk to a lot of people and we interact with a lot of people, and we're trying to navigate everyone's situation and present as best we can, is it's like a car accident. You could try to do everything right when you're driving a car, and you could still get hit because of another car that's in the path,
Right.
that's coming towards you, and it's nothing like that you brought on yourself. And so I kind of think of social media like that. But as far as being prepared, I think it's really important to be prepared emotionally, to know if it's safe emotionally for you to get on social media. And if you're noticing that you may have some pain points with a lot of things in social media, it's good to take a look at that. And if you're not ready to address it at the time, maybe just put a pin in that and come back later and and see if that's something that you can work around. Like, oh, I noticed that I get upset when XYZ happens.
Yeah.
And it's good of us. We can't say that everything that happens externally to us is responsible for how we feel inside.
Yeah. And that's
So
hard. It's hard because it puts more responsibility on the griever again when we're in a place where we feel like we have too much responsibility already. But it kind of is our responsibility to decide if we are in a place where we can be there safely, like you said. I also think that something that we should do on social media, there are people who have different styles of grieving. Like, we joke a lot about our dead people, and some people are really, that's neither good nor bad, but that's not their style. And so I think that when you find somebody, or a saying or whatever, if it feels good to you, go with it. If you don't like what they're saying, discard it. They are not the expert. They are the expert in their experience and their experience only. I'm the expert in my experience. You're the expert. Like you said, everybody's experience, we cannot know 100% what other people's experience are, even if we have very similar circumstances. So you just have to be willing to say, nope, that's not for me. And even this is something I think that we do, and I think it's dangerous. And that is to treat social media like therapy. Like,
yes,
if it's on social media, we're like, oh, they're the expert. They know. I have to believe this. I have to buy into it. I have to do what they say. No, even if that person is a therapist or has some sort of, letters and numbers behind their name, they are not acting as your therapist, right?
which
They don't.
numbers? The third.
A, 3, 7, 9er,
3PO.
C3PO.
Yes.
Those are the experts. But because there's not a back and forth relationship, they're putting information out this way, but they're not knowing your situation, your backstory, all of the stuff that makes therapy a relationship. There's none of that. So nothing on the internet is true or false.
What?
I'm just saying that even if somebody has credentials, what they say, you don't have to agree with it, and you don't have to buy into it, and you don't have to do what they say.
Yes, you are absolutely able to decide what you keep and what you do not keep from social media advice, even with us.
Mm-hmm.
So there. And if you listened to our episode earlier this week with Dr. Julie Hanks, she offered some amazing advice. Number 1, be intentional with the accounts you follow if you find that you are not handling looking at other people's stories well. The next thing was, you don't have to take my advice if you don't want to. And that's coming from a doctor of the brain and feelings. So it's always up to you. We have so many different experiences, and we're just all these little concoctions of different things, right? Experience is so complex and so varied, and that's why it can be such a crapshoot. But at the same time, like, the things that make it amazing also can make it bad, and the things that can make it bad can make it good. It's a lot of it's neutral.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, Mel. As far as, so we've talked about what we're intaking, but what about what we put out in social media? Do you think that we have a responsibility to think about other people's experiences when we post? Do you think that there's some responsibility towards what we put out there? Or do you think that we just get to put what our experience is, and if people jive with it, great, and if they don't, also great? What do you think about that?
I say the answer depends. Can you give me more context?
Well, I mean, do we have a responsibility in posting? Do we need to be careful about what we say and how we say it?
Here is what I have done since I had a Facebook account day 1. I saw the potential for it to be an online journal that could be great or it could be bad. And so I made the decision that I would try to keep things as neutral as possible. Now, I think that there are also varying degrees with that because, well, what is considered neutral? I don't post anything political. It stresses me out. I wouldn't talk about it in real life anyway, so I'm not going to post it. I also would see fights going on online, and so I made a decision. I don't want to be part of that. But then I kept going in my life and I became a widow. And now, as part of a community that has not really had their voice heard before, I do find myself wanting to be an advocate and standing up more. And also, when I do that, I always try to keep in mind how can I, instead of be polarizing, how can I help build a bridge? So, me personally, I'm not going to get on there and be highly emotional and say, everybody sucks and I hate all of you. And like, that's not my style. That is some people's style and it attracts certain people. People will find their audience no matter what. Like, everyone's on the internet and there's something for everybody. So I don't feel like it's my place to judge what somebody else should or should not do. I can say what I would do and ways that I would not maybe choose to say those things. I also am I'm always highly aware of trying to be, quote, responsible with what I put out there. And I do my best. And sometimes I run stuff by my therapist where I'm like, is this a psychologically sound thing that I am about to say?
Wait, is anything you say psychologically sound?
Only if I check with her first.
Okay, you get the go ahead. You got the green light from the brain scientist.
Yeah. So that's my perspective on that. I'm not the Instagram police. I know that I don't like the troll thing, but that trolls are more people that are commenting on accounts, and you were asking about putting it out. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I definitely think there's a line that can be crossed. If you're advocating for self-harm or harming others, or you know what I'm saying, there is a line that can be crossed, but I think that most of the area is very gray because again, it's based on what your experience is. And if your experience is this, then I mean, that's what social media is. It's your chance to say it without having somebody else tell you can't say it. So yeah, I do think that there is a line, but I think that it's pretty broad what is, I guess, acceptable to put out there. Now you like to talk about being trauma informed though, and not just flying off and saying whatever is in your brain. Do you think that people should have more of that in their back pocket when they post?
Well, I think it's never harmful.
Yeah, okay.
And I mean, to be trauma informed requires research. There's a lot out there now because it's really gaining in momentum with being talked about more in media and in social media and everything. So there are a lot of resources available. On Audible, there's a book that Oprah wrote with Dr. Bruce Perry it's not like textbook kind of lingo, and it's easy to listen to, and it's very, very helpful. It's easy to find trauma informed things from reputable sources.
Yeah.
And so that's just how I prefer to look at things, because I would hate to like just put something out there flippantly and then have it be harmful to somebody.
It's scary. Like I feel nervous about that. Like we talked about before, you know, we don't ever want to feel like we put something out there that was hurtful or harmful to somebody. And it feels like it's kind of a great responsibility because so many people listen to us. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, Mel.
Hello, teacher. However, when does it go into the category of you're not saying something and so it's suppressing
I
the
know.
conversation?
I don't know. And how many times have you or me said something that felt like it was maybe controversial or that somebody might disagree with, and then you have all these people go, thank you, you know, I've been feeling so bad about having those feelings, or you know, and you're like, oh, putting it out there felt scary, but then all of these people feel relieved by it. So once again, not cut and dry, super annoying.
And also that would be an example of us taking an external sort of validation for our internal feelings.
Yeah.
It's tough. Thought work, feelings work, emotions work. I think those of us, I think the whole world needs them, honestly, but especially those of us that are
Are
widowed.
going through something. Okay, I have one more question for you about us posting or, the output. How much is too much to share? Now, I share a lot on social media every single day. I basically write down our entire day and go into details, happy, sad, good, bad. And I try to be really honest because I feel like social media sometimes is very rose colored glasses. This is what we did on vacation. This is my beautiful family. This is, what I'm saying? This is our gender reveal party, all of these things. And so I feel like I almost have a responsibility to combat that this is what real life looks like. But I have heard from some people that we should not be sharing that kind of thing, because it might be harmful to us until we have actually gone through it. What do you think about that?
Again,
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
of context, like a specific example, because that's such a broad question.
Well, just people would say you don't talk about your experience until you've healed from it, and then you can talk about the details and the hard things and the not so pretty things. But while you're in the trenches, that you should not be talking about it.
I actually have a specific example, but I'm only going to talk about it if it's okay with you, because this came up with the CPS stuff.
Oh, okay.
Can I talk about it?
Yeah.
Anita, do you remember back in the days of a few months ago where you got CPS called on you?
Yes, it was the worst. It was the second worst day of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember. And you do post every single day, which, for the record, to each their own. Do it. Who cares? If people don't like it, like, they don't have to follow you. Nobody
Unfollow, yeah.
them, whatever. However, I do remember thinking, okay, Anita has kids. Anita has like a very stressful situation. We have a podcast. I know that Anita talks about her details every day online. At this point, I am trying to be concerned for you as my friend on what is going to get you put in jail. And so I remember saying, because you asked me, you go, well, should I post about this? And I said,
no.
I feel like just because it's CPS, the CPS vein, if you have detail, and this case has not been addressed and wrapped up, and that your kids are safe and that you know that they're not going to be taken away, I feel like it's kind of a sketchy, or it's kind of a scary thing to do that, because then I was just like, what happens if, because Anita's very emotional and it's like, and she wants to talk about this right now. Like, if you put that out there, would it come back to bite you?
Yeah.
And that's a very high stakes problem with that situation.
Yeah. And for the record, it was a big wah, wah. I was so upset about it and so tied up in it. And like, it ruined my life for the week that it was going on. And then when they came out, they were like, and why are we here? And it was totally fine. But yeah, I mean, there's like a difference between legal proceedings though, and just talking about your emotional state.
So then that would be, yeah. So that's why it cannot be grouped in a broad manner. It would have to be case by case. So safety, if safety is a concern, I would say maybe don't talk about certain things that could get you put in jail or could be misconstrued or things like that. And so now let's go over to another example. Have you had an example where somebody has said something to you about a certain thing that maybe is not going to get you in trouble with the government? Like talk about one. Let's see. Then I'll answer.
Okay. I can think of examples where I felt embarrassed about things. Like I went to the parent teacher conference of one of my kids, and they were doing terribly. And my first reaction was to hide that information. Like, nobody should know this. This is embarrassing. But then I decided that when I felt that shame feeling, that was the actual time to share it, because shame doesn't live in the light. And what I found was that when I did share that, people were really supportive. And it was not something that I really should be ashamed of. You know, people's kids do terrible in school. We're going through a pandemic. Their dad just died. Like, give everybody a break. But my initial reaction was to hide it. So I don't know if that.
So in this case, it seems like the issue was how you felt about the thing. Because then when you posted about it and you got validation, you're like, oh, I realize it's helping people. And so a lot of the times I think it has to do with our feelings, and we're so scared that it's going to come across a certain way. But then when it does come out, people interpret it not how you felt it. And good thing that they didn't feel all the panic that you felt, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and there was something freeing about just saying it and not trying to portray something that wasn't reality, and just being honest about it.
yeah.
There's some people who talk about, though, in your posting, and I've thought a lot about this, like, what is your purpose? Is your purpose to receive validation? Is your purpose to help other people? Is your purpose to
cat videos?
Yes. You know, part of my purpose is for myself, because I can look back and see how we've changed and how I've changed and how the situation has changed. So it really has been a positive thing aside from the community. But then I've also just heard people say that it's not something that you should share while you're in the moment. So,
well, there are also people that look at our widow shirts and they're like, you should not wear that in public.
Yeah, that's true.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
I had a friend last week who has struggled heavily for so many years with suicide. I mean, like, we've been worried about him so many times, like very consistently. And it got to a point last week where and he was used to like putting his feelings on the internet, and so it could be seen as a few ways. Like, maybe a lot of people thought, oh my gosh, why are you putting that out there? Don't do that. But then at the same time, because he did put that out there, a friend, like a community of friends, figured out where he lived. They called the cops. They saved him.
Yeah.
Got to him. And so
again, it's not black and white. It's really.
I have a question. Do you want it to be black and white?
Always. I would prefer black and white of every single thing, except for ice cream. Many flavors.
Okay.
I want many flavors for ice cream. Everything else should be a yes, no, easy.
And that is why you are a doctor and why I'm a musician.
Yes!
I don't like the black and white.
Yeah. I like there to be parameters.
Here, well, could you have just like infinity parameters? There you go. Work on that.
Okay, fine. I
Don't
don't
work around. I'm kidding. There's one last thing I did want to say about social media, and we've talked about this in passing before on our podcast. Remember that marketers know marketing psychology to find your pain points, to present information that could maybe cause you to think thoughts like, oh, am I doing something wrong? Oh, this is fear-based. Know that.
Not good enough.
Even just go to YouTube and type in like online marketing 101, just so you're informed about what the tactics are. I know this because I have to sell my online jazz piano course. And so I'm enrolled in these, and it's like, it's part of it. So we're constantly barraged with those things. And just be careful. Do your research if you can. If you're having a hard time, unfollow people. Yeah. Nobody says that you have to have them in your feed. Nobody even says you have to have an Instagram account.
Yeah. And you can, even if you do, you can just scroll on by. Do you know what the latest ads I started getting, Mel?
What?
Obviously, they know my pain points. Jump ropes.
Huh?
Really expensive jump ropes.
Wait, how expensive can a jump rope be?
$100 for a jump rope.
How many
I don't know.
hundred?
Just 100, but that seems like a lot for a jump rope.
I feel like the algorithm loves me. I've gotten so many awesome clothes from there, and my favorite is a stained glass UFO picking up cows.
Did it come?
No, you told me not to order it.
Okay,
You said
good.
it was a scam.
I'm like, that's the sloth all over again, Mel.
Yeah, one time I found this sloth that you could hang from a tree. It was a life-size, human-size sloth with ropes on it that was a swing. It never came.
We still mourn the loss of the sloth.
We do. So we love you all. We understand that we will all never walk exactly in each other's shoes, and that there might be times where what we say ends up being hurtful unintentionally, and maybe vice versa. We're also responsible for how we are assessing if we're able to be on social media and things like that. So
How we're consuming it. Have you guys found any good ways to assess whether or not you should be on social media, what you should or shouldn't be sharing, and how you can feel safe while you're scrolling? Tell us about all of those things below.
yes, we would love to hear your thoughts. Also, remember to join our Widow Wives Club. It's on Facebook.
Answer all the questions,
Yes.
all of them. Until we talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
Two young widows having all the hard conversations, trying to figure out what do we do now?
This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep, Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.